Not very often you have the opportunity to invest in something that is literally going to change the world. But today I have a stock that offers a fantastic Canadian value opportunity to be part of an industry that is likely to revolutionize the way we live in the next 20 years. Today we're going to talk about nuclear energy. And there's no way to talk about nuclear energy as an investor in Canada without talking about this company. We're going to cover Cameco. Now, I am not exaggerating when I say I have had this requested to me over a dozen times, and it has been requested to me for almost 2 months. But I've given it some time for a reason. For a couple, actually. First, is this a fad? When we first saw the big AI hype cycle start to explode, we saw the real demand for data centers. There was a real question mark about, okay, how are we going to get the energy for that? And while nuclear wasn't the first option people looked towards, it seems to be one of the most popular. But one of the biggest momentum shifters that pushed people in this direction happened in April, May, when we saw all the tariff uncertainty and all the question marks there. And we started to see real momentum towards building Canadian nuclear energy. And more importantly, we saw a real shift towards accelerating the Canadian resource industry, which of course is going to massively benefit companies like Cameco, who produce uranium here in Canada. On top of that, we've got all the geopolitical tensions in the world that we could talk about, but it really does seem that over the months, there's just been more and more positive news for uranium. So in today's video, I'm going to talk to you about one of the most interesting stocks in the industry. We're going to cover some expert analysis that's been done covering this company, and we're going to talk about my opinions on whether or not you need to have this in your portfolio. Welcome to Gold Lunch Investing. My name is Liam. Today we're talking about Cameco. I've got a great article from Seeking Alpha. We're going to go through the real story of the stock, but more importantly, is this the uranium miner you want? Is this the way you want to be exposed to nuclear energy? And spoiler alert, in my opinion, yeah, this is probably how I'm going to get some exposure towards the nuclear energy trend. So on the screen right here beside me, I've got that article from Seeking Alpha. It's actually a couple of months old at this point, but it's one of the best that I've read, and I've been through a couple. So I think it really is valuable. It covers a couple really interesting things, and specifically it covers what makes Cameco so special. And in part of that, honestly, is because they cover all these different elements in the uranium/nuclear energy industry. The author is bullish on Cameco thanks to your strong uranium production capacity, market dominance in the Western region. Their strategic contracts to sell 220 million pounds of uranium to 41 customers, significant focus on Western markets. Company has strong financials, significant increase in adjusted EBITDA, robust balance sheet. And despite all the risks, their leadership in uranium production and the promising outlook for nuclear energy support a positive investment thesis. This was written in April, so by geopolitical risks, they mean tariffs. The thesis, always love it when an author starts with their investment thesis because it allows us to kind of evaluate it. So let's see, what exactly is it that this author likes? Well, they're bullish on Cameco from the uranium production angle. Fair enough. Where the company plans to produce over 22.4 million pounds of uranium in 2025. You see they've got two sources here, right? Cigar Lake, McArthur River / Key Lake. And it goes through the production numbers. Including quarterly and yearly, which is actually really cool. By looking at the production of uranium by Cameco, I'm convinced that despite the reduced uranium production guidance from a total of 23.4 million pounds in 24, 22.4 million pounds in 2025 from its major production mines, the company has a high bullish potential. They've executed various contracts that position it to sell over 220 million pounds to 41 customers. However, the Western region, America at 44% and Europe at 39%, takes the largest share. With only a small customer base in Asia at 17, and adding the ban on Russian uranium imports into the US into the picture. Cameco has a high bullish potential from Western dominance and a new record high uranium production hitting 20.3 million at McArthur / Key Lake, surpassing any global mining operation. Cameco is best positioned to supply the most uranium to Western utilities. Digitization and automation optimization of projects at the Key Lake have played a key role in this success. We've seen a very similar story all across these resource industries. Talked about it when we talked about oil sands not that long ago, where they were using automated giant pieces of machinery. Essentially, they even had robot dogs they're patrolling these things. There's so much interesting stuff going on in robotics, and it makes sense that big industries like this that need a lot of manpower find ways to use automation to make things less expensive. They also have an edge in uranium production, and its commitment to exploring reactor and fuel supply adds an aspect of engineering, operating, maintaining the development of new reactors. Now, when I read that gave me a little bit of pause, because I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then I thought about what that really means. That means that these guys are not only literally supplying the base resource needed for this entire nuclear energy revolution to happen in the first place, but also because they've been around, because they're part of this supply chain, because they've been there supplying the existing nuclear industry for so long, they also have the expertise. So not only could you have the like very profitable resource industry that is a little bit commodity driven, but now you could have that back end industry. Think of how all these engineering firms have made just a killing being part of this green energy transition, right? All these renewables. Well, they needed all this engineering experience. They needed all this construction experience. They needed all this technical experience that was provided by all these really very, very profitable engineering firms. Well, if Cameco can get a cut of that, imagine the kind of recurring revenues they could be pulling in on top of their existing business. I think it'd be really interesting. You can even see like a spin-off entity. Really, really interesting opportunity there. But let's carry on. At the moment, in terms of uranium production, there are only 3 entities that match Cameco's production in the Western region. Russian Rosatom, I don't know if I'm saying that right, it's been barred under the Russian uranium import ban, the China Atomic Authority, and the French Orano. Orano faced challenges at their Somar mine in Niger following the coup d'etat in July of 2023, and China Atomic Authority faced tariffs and other geopolitical challenges that best position Cameco for the Western region market. I've explained in more detail my basis on why Cameco is bullish, looking at its uranium production capacity and its market dominance in uranium supply in the Western region. So, little brief on the company, very helpful. I'm sure if you're watching this, you know a little bit about Cameco, but they're a uranium production company. They're from Saskatchewan, Canada. They mainly use uranium to generate electricity. They have 3 segments: fuel services, uranium, and Westinghouse. Uranium segment focuses on mining, milling, and purchasing the selling uranium. Fuel services segment converts, refines, and fabricates uranium concentrate, purchases, and conversion services. And Westinghouse segment operates nuclear reactor technology and originally manufactured equipment, provides products and services to government agencies and commercial utilities. Again, that's what I'm talking about with the potential for this like awesome recurring revenue business that could help other people building their own things beyond these government agencies, commercial utilities. I'm thinking like the Microsofts and the Facebooks and the, I guess, Metas, pardon me, and the, you know, the other super scaling data center companies that might need some serious know-how, right? The Westinghouse division could be a big part of that. They could have like a separate subdivision. Really cool idea, but still, they are in the right position for that. They have engineering services around nuclear utilities, right? They're everything you want in the nuclear industry. And it's all under one roof, under one stock. And again, it's priced like a resource stock, which is actually pretty good for us, because even though uranium's pretty hot right now, think about the opportunity that comes in 10, 20 years. I'm not saying this is a great 2-3 year hold. It could be. I don't know. But 20 years from now, I think this thing is going to kill it. They have an edge in the uranium market growth. If you look at all of the growth coming in uranium, that's what this blue chart is here, right? So China's building a bunch. Asia in general is building a bunch. I don't know if India is included in that Asia number. I assume not. That must be Asia minus those 2 countries. Africa and the Middle East is building nuclear reactors. Russia is building nuclear reactors. Eastern Europe, Americas, and the UK are building a small amount. But since this article was released, we've seen a huge amount of interest, particularly into SMRs, these small modular reactors that could be theoretically implemented for all these other uses. We've also seen a massive shift in public support towards nuclear energy, thanks in part to a bunch of time. Honestly, it's been a long time since Fukushima, since that big nuclear disaster, and we are in an energy scarce environment. Honestly, we continue to grow energy demand for the first time in a while. AI has just totally shifted the amount of energy we need. We also live in a time where there's a lot of geopolitical tension. People don't trust each other. Nations are constantly eyeing each other. Nobody wants to be the guy that needs somebody else's resource in order to survive. So a lot of Western nations have looked towards ways that they can sort of become more self-sufficient. And while I think conventional energy in North America has an opportunity in the shorter term, if you're looking 20, 30 years down the road, this uranium nuclear energy idea seems maybe more interesting. Large-scale reactors have been on the decline since the 90s. I think everybody here knows that. Of course, the cost-efficient, hopefully, SMRs and this whole new generation of SMRs are likely to sort of reverse that trend in the not-so-distant future. Growth of nuclear power adoption by data centers still solid. The projected SMR capacity is supposed to hit 40 gigawatts by 2050. US is leading SMR research at 35%. Europe's going to give a chunk. I think there's been a lot of investment into defense. There's also this whole idea about spending a lot of money on infrastructure as part of defense. Maybe SMRs in that. I've seen a lot of investment into Canadian infrastructure in the resource industry, particularly. You could see SMRs used for all sorts of things there. United States, very similar idea. They're investing into the resource industry. Maybe you see that there. Europe's investing in the defense industry. Maybe you see SMRs used to replace some of their natural gas imports in the longer term. Who knows? Really interesting opportunity. We've got some projections here of what is expected to happen, right? You're seeing the installed capacity going up quite a bit. The number of reactors up by the hundreds. If you summed all of that, I'm sure we would be looking somewhere in between, like, depending on where exactly these lines actually are, that's at least, let's say, 500, maybe more, maybe 600 reactors that they're projecting to be built by 2050. And again, there's only a handful of companies that mine uranium at scale that have the expertise of a Cameco. Their financials. Here's the part where you might start to think, all right, so the business idea is solid, but do I want to own the stock? Because sometimes when we're in a time like this, we see, idea on this side, big trend going on, whatever it might be. And then you look over here and the financial story doesn't line up. For example, we saw a lot at the very beginning of the AI revolution, a lot of companies saying, we have a great new idea for how to use AI. And they didn't demonstrate a way to monetize it. And instead, we saw the sort of picks and shovels companies actually get a huge amount of money from bigger companies. Again, we talked about the hyperscalers investing into AI. But if you had bought into a variety of names, let's be honest, a variety of names in 2023, 2024 were killing it, and they haven't actually shown longer term profitability. So you don't want to jump in at the start of a trend. I think the big difference here is that this is a legacy company and it's been traded as a commodity stock for a long time. A lot of big institutional money know this name really well. They're not hopping on this just because of this SMR trend. And if they were, let's be honest, that trend hit its peak a little while ago. You might have an opportunity right this moment to be buying in at a lull in the interest in nuclear energy, as instead a lot of interest has been going towards things like LNG over the last little while. Let's read through the earnings. This is from Q4, so you can find maybe more updated earnings on something like a fiscal.ai if you use it, or somewhere on here like Seeking Alpha. But either way, they do a good job of outlining some of the key elements. And that's part of why I wanted to show you this. So their annual net earnings hit 172 million after cash from operations, generating 905 million, delivered an adjusted EBITDA increase of 73% from 2023. Westinghouse, which remember is that like engineering division, it's a part of the business that I honestly think has the most opportunity right now, recorded an adjusted EBITDA of 483 million. However, the full year recorded a net loss of 218 million attributable to inventories, reevaluation of market prices compared to the acquisition time. For the quarter, the company recorded net earnings of 135 million, an improvement from about 80 not last year, but the year before. Delivered an increased adjusted net earnings in the quarter from 90 million to 157. They continue to generate value for shareholders. An increased annual dividend at 16 cents per common share from 12 cents in 2023. From the company's promising business, it expects an increase of 40 cents. Maybe that's supposed to be 4 cents per common share in 2025. 40 cents would be pretty insane, which would achieve a double-digit dividend in 2023. So that's pretty interesting. Analysts estimate the Cameco projection of double digits of EPS of 24 in 2026 to be achieved in the next quarter, June 2025, and the yearly EPS will hit between $1.26 and $1.70 I assume. Going by the near-term risks such as geopolitical issues, the company may likely not achieve the analyst estimates, but it's poised for this performance in a perfect or ideal business environment. Again, every time they mention geopolitical impacts, they are talking about tariffs. The company is also has a strong balance sheet with available cash liquidity of $600 million and a $1 billion undrawn credit facility. Prices of uranium are forecasted to rebound mid-2025 to about $90 to $100 per pound, so they expect more cash flow. The company also made the final repayment of $200 million in credit used to finance Westinghouse. The loan is now fully paid, reducing the company's debt burden to the current $1.3 billion. Good credit score is seen in the 5.88 Altman Z-score. It's above 3, which means the company has a strong going concern aspect and is not becoming insolvent in the near future, which is always good when you're buying into a company. Also optimistic following the strong uranium contract portfolio, the company closed Q4 2024 and full year 2024 at 220 million pounds. Breakdown is 28 million pounds per year between 2025 and 2029. So if you look at the sort of trend here, things were getting bad going into 2020, as you can see in that chart. But since then, it's been quite a strong rebound. It's quite a different trend. And I would expect that line, or at least the curve of that, to be getting steeper. So over time, I would expect more and more and more and more contracts being made, because again, it seems like nuclear power is one of these things people want to be the energy of the future. From the financials above, I've noted the company estimates EPS improvement and analyst forecast EPS projection reveals optimism. From this context, I value Cameco using cash flow from operations and its PE ratio. This is among its competitors, and you see right here. So we're looking cash from operations. Cameco has quite a bit more than most of its competitors that you see on the bottom of the screen there. Cameco's in orange. You go down using EV to EBIT. You see again, Cameco is top of the room there. Everybody else, I mean, we got some negatives here below zero. So there is negative EBIT. They're not making money. But Cameco is doing a little bit better. They have a higher EV to EBIT. They're not overvalued. Instead, the company is setting high expectations for future growth, according to this analyst, which is at least an interesting thought. So what do I think about buying this company, middle of 2025, maybe second half of 2025? What do I think about the value of buying something like a Cameco? Well, I think you'd buy this for maybe one of two reasons. Either one, this is a hedge. You are putting it into your portfolio, maybe into an RRSP, an American 401k, a Roth IRA, like a retirement style account that you do not intend on selling. And you're just going to put a few shares every time you buy. So if you're somebody like me, you buy monthly intervals in those accounts, or if you buy, quarterly, whatever it might look like, you buy a couple shares every time so that you have a position just in case. Because if this does end up being like an Nvidia of the nuclear energy boom, you would hate to be the guy who looked at the stock and didn't own any. You also, maybe like me, have interests in other energy sources, right? I talk a lot about Canadian oil and gas on the channel. There's an opportunity there for the next maybe 5-10 years. But if you're looking at a 20, 25, 30 year timeline, then maybe this is something you're buying now to sort of hedge against the likelihood that nuclear energy starts to replace things like oil and gas. The second reason you'd buy into the stock is because you are a firm believer that nuclear energy is the power of the future, that this technology is going to revolutionize the world, and that you want to be part of the story. You want to own the picks and shovels. You want to own the fundamental resource that makes all of this possible, and the guys that have a lot of the technical know-how to support everybody else. Particularly, you're thinking of Meta, you're thinking of Microsoft, right? These guys have already talked to Cameco about a lot of these projects. You've seen Cameco working on that stuff, right? You're going to see more and more of that as time goes on. You're going to see, maybe different industrials looking for SMRs, and they're going to go to Cameco because Cameco are the nuclear energy guys. At the end of the day, that's who these people are. If you're a firm believer in this nuclear energy revolution, you need to own this stock. Me personally, I think that there is a huge opportunity for nuclear energy, and I love owning Canadian stocks with asymmetric opportunity, which means that they could double, triple, quadruple, quintuple, 10x, 100x at some point in the distant future. And the downside is really just opportunity cost. I don't think the stock's going to drop. You see that they have literally a decade's worth of production already contracted. They're producing about 22 million a year. They've got 220 million contracted right now. So they have literally a decade's worth of contracts. If we see this nuclear revolution go nowhere in 5 years, okay, maybe I'll cut my losses and I'll say, man, that money could have gone towards whatever growth industry we're looking at in the 2030s. But right now it looks like they have an opportunity for that crazy upside. And I would rather take that risk, take that opportunity cost risk, own part of this, be in this industry, be ready, have a position. I'm not saying it's going to be a 10% position, right? I'm not going to make this a huge chunk of my portfolio, but I'm going to make this a position and then I'm going to sit on it and I'm going to ignore it. And I'm going to ignore it this year, probably next year, and we'll see. These projects are going to be slow. A lot of investors are going to get bored. So this is a great opportunity to maybe buy in slowly. But every time you see one of those big announcements about a Microsoft, a Google, an Amazon, whoever, building a new data center, they're reaching out to Westinghouse, right? They're investing in SMRs, et cetera, you're going to see Cameco stock move a little bit. People get a little bit excited. You're going to see that P ratio bump up a little bit every single time. Right now, the P looks expensive. If you're buying the company for its current fundamentals, yeah, you're probably going to be disappointed if there's no revolution. But I think there's a chance. And honestly, that's good enough for me. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Are you a big believer in this nuclear energy revolution? Do you think this is coming? Do you think we're going to see the explosion of SMRs all over the place? They're going to power all of these, manufacturing or mining or oil sands or whatever, right? It's all going to be powered by SMRs. Or do you think that this is an overvalued stock that got caught up in the hype? Love to know your thoughts in the comments down below. As always, if you like this video, you made it this far, please do like the video. If you like what we do here on the channel, please do hit that subscribe button. And I hope I see you in our next video.